Hello listeners. Today we're reading some Nuclear Revenge, which are revenge stories so brutal, the only accurate description for them is nuclear. A mother's instigation, a daughter's completion. I've promised my late friend that I wouldn't share this story until at least a year after her death. That time has passed, and this is nothing short of beautiful. Cruel, but beautiful. I'm going to tell this story as a first-person point of view. This is the story as my late friend told me. I was an only child to two loving parents. My mum had a difficult pregnancy and an even harder labour. It was so bad that the doctor advised that they never try again. Because he didn't want his wife to die, Dad got a vasectomy and it was successful. I was so sad that I didn't have any siblings, but I had a happy childhood until I was a young adult. When I was in the middle of college, Mum was diagnosed with stage 4 HGSOC. High-grade serous ovarian cancer. It's the most aggressive form of ovarian cancer, and Mum's older sister and Mum both died from it. We knew her odds weren't looking good. I don't know what Dad was thinking. I really don't. But he started an affair with his co-worker, a woman just a few years older than me. The co-worker started integrating herself into me and my mum's life. She'd go shopping for us, keep the house in order, help me with homework, and even sit with Mum when Mum was going through chemo and Dad and I weren't there. And no, I had no clue. At all. I just thought it was a co-worker being kind to a family going through hard times. Mum fought. She fought hard, but the odds just weren't in her favour. One day, I was visiting her in hospice, and we were playing Chutes and Ladders. Mum got really quiet, and then she told me, "You do know your dad isn't planning to reverse his vasectomy, right?" I was surprised, wondering why she was talking about it. I said, "Yeah, I know. Why?" Mum just looked at me and said, "I think you'd best keep it in mind." We continued playing, and when I left for the night, I kissed her and she said, "You'll be fine on your own." But she died later that night. I believe she knew she was going to die that night and didn't want to scare me. Once again, co-worker was right by our side. She helped us plan the funeral, brought us food, helped out around the house, and slowly started moving her things in. It was like putting a frog in a pot of hot water and having the temperature raised. It was slow, it was gradual. A year or so later, she'd completely moved herself in and was a part of our lives. I don't remember what made me suspicious enough to start digging, but I started digging. I learned the affair began shortly after Mum's diagnosis. I was sickened, furious, and saddened. I took out my cell, ready to confront Dad and co-worker with the knowledge, but something else struck me. See, during one of her visits, co-worker mentioned to Mum and me that she wished to have children with her fiancé. Mum knew that the affair was going on, and she trusted me to spill the beans. But I wanted to twist the knife further. As a result, I decided to play the long game. It was a gamble, one that had a good chance of not paying off, but it was one I was willing to take. I kept my mouth shut. I watched as they courted, got engaged, and married 3 years later. I squealed with delight when they announced their engagement to me, wore a proud smile on their wedding day, and made a toast at the reception. I even took extra steps to hide test results from Dad's urologist in such a way that co-worker wouldn't find it, but Dad would. Believe me, I was internally screaming. I wanted the world to know the way they hurt my mum and me during her darkest hour. I got dangerously close several times, but I said nothing, knowing the payoff would be worth it. Time passed. We played happy family. I got married to my awesome husband and had children. Dad and co-worker played doting grandparents, but I knew from the pained look on co-worker's face that she was bemoaning her empty nest. Just as I was beginning to give up hope, the day came. Co-worker and I had started the tradition of getting together for coffee shortly after Mum's death. We'd talk girl things, again, as I internally screamed, laugh, cry, love, live, that sort of thing. That day, co-worker was sad and sullen. I could tell she'd been crying. I asked what was wrong. I couldn't believe my ears when I heard why. She was struggling to get pregnant for years, but assumed it was stress from work. Then her periods started coming fewer and farther between. She decided to go to the doctor and find out why. It turned out she was entering perimenopause, and her chances of successfully getting pregnant had dwindled. The doctor told her, in essence, her childbearing years were over. As I crooned sympathetic noises, co-worker said, "It doesn't make sense. We tried so hard to have kids, but I wasn't able to get pregnant, and I don't know why." It was then that I knew it was time. "You mean, Dad didn't tell you?" Didn't tell me what? I was fighting every chance to smile as I played the "it's not my right to tell" and "I can't believe he didn't tell you" cards until she practically begged me. I should have won an Oscar for my performance. I told her about the vasectomy and that Dad had no intention of reversing it. You should have seen co-worker. She completely deflated like a balloon. Her shoulders slumped, she bowed her head, and she sobbed into her hands. I wanted to rejoice. I wanted to rub her face in it. I knew though, that would make me look like the bad guy. So I hugged her and rubbed her back, telling her Dad was horrible for not telling her, that she deserved a different outcome and that he completely wasted her time. Again, I was fighting to not smile. When she left, I told her I would always be there for her. But I knew she wasn't going to be part of my life anymore. Why would she? I was the daughter of the man who betrayed her. Once she left and I was alone, I wept with joy and relief that it paid off, but also deep sorrow that Mum hadn't been there to see it. That was the last time that I saw or talked to co-worker. A few weeks later, Dad called me in a fury. Co-worker had packed her bags and left, slapping him with divorce papers. She yelled at him for not telling her that he'd had a vasectomy with no intention of reversing it, that he knew she'd wanted kids and that she'd wasted all of her childbearing years, and that he'd left it to me to tell her. He then said, "How could you do that to us? We loved you." So I said in a cold tone, "You and Mum did a good job teaching me how to keep secrets." I hung up, and that was it. I never spoke to him again either. Last I heard, he and co-worker were divorced and everyone shunned him because of his keeping the secret. I know I won't be joining Mum after I die. What I did was cruel. It was horrible. I should have done what Mum wanted and spilled the beans beforehand instead of wasting co-worker's youth and childbearing years. Even if she could adopt, she'd probably die before her children were fully grown. Although, it is hard to have compassion and mercy for a woman who integrated herself into my dying mum's life as she was screwing my mum's husband. I really don't think this is very cruel from OP. The cruelty really comes from the dad who knows he's running out co-worker's childbearing years and refusing to tell her. OP telling co-worker at all is a mercy. It was never your responsibility. But also, it seems strange to me that the idea of having children was so important to her that it was literally a deal breaker, but she didn't mention it once in their entire relationship. Like OP said, at the point she found out about the vasectomy, she wouldn't have been able to see her theoretical kids grow into adults. So how could she let it go that far without mentioning it? Assuming everything happened as you told it, she can hardly be mad at you or your dad. She let this happen herself. Aunt broke my model kit, so I took away her everything. This whole thing started exactly a year ago, but just ended, and a friend told me to post here, so off we go. I live in Turkey, and as you might know, southeast of my country was wrecked by a couple of giant earthquakes a year ago. My city was the epicenter, and while the house I lived with my parents in wasn't destroyed, a lot of the shelves got knocked off, and one of them was the one where I held my gunpla kits, which is a plastic model looking something like this. Out of all the kits I had, only one survived. I built it with my grandfather who passed away a few years ago, so I was ecstatic that it survived. A few months after, everything had calmed down, so my mother called her relatives for dinner, which included Aunt B. Not for bitch. Her name does actually start with the letter B. She came alongside her son, who is 8 and an entitled brat. While the adults were drinking coffee, this little brat barged into my room and demanded to play with my computer, which I refused since I was editing a video for my college society and had the camera on. Well, the brat went back crying to her mother, who came and started yelling at me. While I was dealing with her, her little brat climbed on my desk and took my model kit, then immediately dropped it and stepped on it. The rest is just yelling, me swearing them up and down and telling them they were going to pay for it, with her calling me a weirdo for still having toys and that she wasn't going to pay for shit. At first, my mother was not going to make her pay for it to keep the peace, but when she realised it was the kit I made with my late grandfather, her father, she was angrier than I was and went out for blood. We took the case to a friend of ours who is a lawyer that specialises with in-family cases. They told us, since my camera caught it all, we would definitely win, but it was better to come to an agreement out of court in a settlement since it would be cheaper. I pulled out a price list of the kits I needed to make an exact replica of the one that was destroyed, and it came out to just about 1,000 USD, which came out to be 25 to 27k in our currency with the exchange rate. Well, she refused, so we took her to court. She pulled all kinds of bullshit to not pay, but the judge ended up making her pay 1650 USD, plus an order for her to pay any border taxes on the replacement kits alongside the court and lawyer fees. It completely f***ed her savings, and her husband, who was already waiting for a chance to divorce her, took that chance and divorced her. When it all ended, she had nothing, and even lost custody of her kids to her now ex-husband. She also not only lost the down payment she had for a house, but she lost all her savings and didn't get alimony from her husband. Am I happy her life got completely f***ed? No, not really. Do I feel sorry it happened? Not in the slightest. She and her crotch goblin f***ed around and found out. It's that simple. I do feel bad for the husband though. He is going to be the one trying to make that brat into a normal person, and I don't envy that in the slightest. I feel like this is a revenge that had to happen. This all happened because she was a terrible person. She never taught her daughter to treat other people's things with respect, which is really just a reflection on herself. But then refusing to pay and taking it to court, when she was obviously liable, that was the real catalyst here which ruined her life. You absolutely did the right thing. And as much as she paid you in liability costs and court and lawyer fees, still can never make up for the sentimentality of the model, which is gone forever. To finish, I've noticed there's actually an update post to the previous story, and it's quite juicy. Well, the time the judge gave my aunt to pay what she owed me came and went, but she didn't make any payment at all, so we legally had to push the case into legal collection. The cops went to her house, but she wasn't there. She was in her house, but she didn't make any noise. So the cops had to leave and get a search permit to enter to look for her. They found her inside, having sold everything and ready to illegally leave the country to not pay anything and start a new life abroad. When they were apprehending her, she attacked the cops, actually clawed the eye of one, causing permanent damage and adding multiple charges to her file. She was taken to court again, this time for more crimes alongside not making a payment in the time the court previously allowed. I'm not sure if I can legally list all the things she was charged with, but in the end she got 18 years and 9 months jail time with no chance of parole until the 15th year. And yes, since she'd sold everything to leave the country, the court took the amount she had to pay us, before putting the rest of the money in an account that her son would get when he's 18. As for the brat I'd mentioned in the first post, I'd said that when her husband divorced her, he'd gotten custody. Well, the kid's personality was so bad, he took him to a psychiatrist, which decided because of my aunt's shitty parenting, he was showing personality issues. He is now in a pre-military boarding school for troubled kids, which he completely hates. As for the money, I would love to say I used it to get the parts necessary to remake the kit, but I had to put it in a savings account. The government recently changed border tax systems, so the previous money became a substantial amount with the new numbers, like hilariously so. As much as I would love to spend it all on models, I have to think about my future, so it's going to stay in a savings account, getting fatter by the day until I graduate. Honestly, that sounds like the best thing to do with it. What better way to honour your grandfather's memory than to use that money to fund your education? I'm sure it's what he would have wanted. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening, I really hope you enjoyed this episode. Leave a comment if you want to share your thoughts on one of these stories, and let this be a reminder not to break people's plastic models unless you're willing to pay for them, because court fees are a bitch.